Hey guys, tonight we begin with something both magnificent and brutal. The untold stories of Norse mythology, where gods are flawed, heroes die badly, and the end of the world isn't a distant threat. It's an inevitable promise. Forget the sanitized Marvel versions you might know. The real Norse myths are stranger, darker, and infinitely more human than any Hollywood interpretation. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just stepped into the 9 realms, where even the gods know they're doomed and every story ends with the same whispered promise: Ragnarok is coming. Picture this. You're standing at the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree, a massive ash that connects all of existence. Its branches stretch so high they disappear into mist, its roots so deep they touch the wells of wisdom and fate itself. This isn't just a tree. It's the spine of reality, creaking and groaning under the weight of 9 entire worlds. Hanging from its branches you'd find Odin, the All-Father, suspended for 9 days and nights, pierced by his own spear, starving and thirsting, all to learn the secrets of the runes. No comfortable meditation retreat here, just self-inflicted agony in pursuit of knowledge that might, possibly, delay the end of everything. At the tree's base, 3 Norns, past, present and future, sit weaving the fates of gods and men. Unlike the cheerful fairy godmothers of later stories, these women are stern, uncompromising. They don't grant wishes, they simply state what must be. Even Odin, king of the gods, can only learn his fate, never change it. The tree itself is under constant attack. A great dragon, Nidugga, gnaws eternally at its roots, trying to bring down all of existence out of pure spite. Above, 4 stags wander the branches, eating the leaves, slowly weakening the cosmic structure. The world tree is dying, has always been dying, will continue dying until Ragnarok finally claims it. This is the Norse cosmos, beautiful, doomed, and utterly indifferent to anyone's comfort. Every morning the tree creaks a little more. Every night the dragon gnaws a little deeper. The gods know this. They've always known this. And still they go about their daily business of ruling, fighting, and trying to postpone the inevitable. In this world, even the foundation of reality is temporary. Nothing lasts forever. Not gods, not trees, not worlds. It's a strangely comforting philosophy, really. If even cosmic trees have bad days, your problems don't seem quite so permanent. Now let's talk about Odin, because the Marvel version barely scratches the surface of how genuinely disturbing this character actually is. Odin isn't a noble king or a wise father figure. He's a desperate, obsessed old man who knows exactly how everything ends, and he's willing to do anything, sacrifice anyone, break any oath, commit any betrayal, to try to prevent it. Odin gave up his eye for wisdom, not in some noble ceremony, but by plucking it out himself and dropping it into Mimir's well like a coin in a fountain. The wisdom he gained? The knowledge that he and all his children are doomed to die at Ragnarok. Congratulations, Odin. Great trade. He hanged himself from Yggdrasil for 9 days, wounded by his own spear, without food or water, staring down into the abyss until the runes revealed themselves to him. The runes gave him power over words, magic, fate itself. Did this help him avoid Ragnarok? No. It just gave him more detailed knowledge of exactly how he's going to die. Odin has 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, who fly across all 9 realms every day, bringing him information. He knows everything that happens everywhere. Every conversation, every secret, every plan. He's basically running a cosmic surveillance state, and he's still going to lose. Here's where it gets really dark. Odin doesn't just collect information. He collects the dead. Every warrior who dies in battle might be chosen to join the Einherjar, his undead army in Valhalla. These aren't rewarded heroes enjoying eternal feasting. They're conscripted corpses, forced to fight and die over and over again in preparation for a war they cannot win. Odin shapeshifts constantly, sometimes a wanderer with a wide-brimmed hat, sometimes a raven, sometimes a serpent. He lies, he cheats, he steals. He seduced the giant Rinder just to father a son who could kill his other son's murderer. He's not wise. He's paranoid, manipulative, and utterly ruthless. And the most disturbing part, it doesn't work. All his scheming, all his sacrifices, all his knowledge, none of it changes anything. Odin knows that at Ragnarok, the wolf Fenrir will swallow him whole. He knows this. He's always known this. And he still can't stop trying to prevent it. The Norse didn't worship Odin because he was good. They worshipped him because he was powerful, knowledgeable, and just as trapped by fate as everyone else. In a world where even gods can't escape their doom, there's something almost comforting about having a deity who's just as anxious and desperate as you are. If Odin represents the cold, calculating side of divine power, then Thor represents something warmer, but no less violent. The god of common people, farmers, and everyone who's ever had to work for a living. Thor isn't trying to prevent Ragnarok through clever schemes. He's just trying to keep the world livable for one more day. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, isn't just a weapon. It's a tool. When he's not using it to cave in giant skulls, he's using it to bless marriages, consecrate ships, and ensure good harvests. It always returns to his hand when thrown, and it can level mountains or crack just enough nuts for dinner, depending on Thor's mood. But here's what the Marvel movies don't tell you. Thor isn't handsome. The original sources describe him as red-haired, red-bearded, with eyes like lightning, and a temper that could shatter stone. His chariot is pulled by 2 goats, Tangrisnir and Tangjoster, that he can slaughter, cook, and eat for dinner, then resurrect the next morning by blessing their bones with his hammer. Infinite goat meat. The god of practical solutions. Thor spends most of his time killing giants. Not because they've done anything particularly evil, but because they represent chaos winter, and the slow entropy that's eating away at the ordered world. Every giant he kills buys humanity a little more time before the cold dark wins. He's not a hero in the classical sense. He's a pest control specialist on a cosmic scale. The most famous Thor story involves him dressing in drag to retrieve his stolen hammer. When the giants demand to see him eat at the wedding feast, he devours an entire ox, 8 salmon, and 3 barrels of mead. The giants are amazed at his bride's appetite. Thor doesn't care about dignity when there's work to be done. Thor's greatest enemy isn't Loki or even the giants. It's Jörmungandr, the world serpent, his own nephew, wrapped around the entire world with its tail in its mouth. At Ragnarok, Thor will kill the serpent, then take 9 steps and die from its poison. He knows this. The serpent knows this. They still hate each other with the passion of a family feud. What makes Thor appealing isn't his strength, it's his futility. He's fighting a war he cannot win, protecting people who will eventually die, maintaining an order that's destined to collapse. And he does it anyway, every day, because someone has to. He's the god of showing up to work even when work is pointless. In the Norse worldview, Thor represents the nobility of continuing to act rightly, even when right action is meaningless. He's not trying to live forever, or become wise, or achieve some grand destiny. He's just trying to make sure the giants don't eat his neighbors today. Tomorrow can worry about itself. Now we come to Loki, and here's where things get complicated, because Loki isn't the villain of Norse mythology. He's the problem. The uncomfortable truth that every family has. Someone you can't live with and can't live without, who helps you and hurts you in equal measure, and whose very existence forces you to confront the contradictions in your own nature. Loki is Odin's blood brother. Not his son, not his servant, but his equal in many ways. They swore oaths to each other so binding that even at the end of the world, neither can completely betray the other. Loki is a shapeshifter, a trickster, a liar, and the mother of monsters. He's also the one who gave the gods their greatest treasures, Odin's 8-legged horse, Thor's hammer, the spear that never misses. Here's the thing about Loki. He solves problems by creating bigger problems. When the gods need Thor's hammer repaired, Loki arranges it, by betting the dwarf smith can have his head if he succeeds. When the gods need protection from giants, Loki finds a builder, who turns out to be a giant himself, demanding the sun, moon, and Freya as payment. Loki's solutions always come with consequences no one anticipated. The myths are full of Loki shape-shifting into animals, into women, into objects. He once turned into a mare to seduce a stallion, became pregnant, and gave birth to Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged horse. The Norse found nothing strange about their trickster god experiencing pregnancy and motherhood. Gender, to them, was just another boundary that could be crossed when necessary. Loki's children are the monsters that will end the world. Fenrir the wolf, who will devour Odin. Jörmungandr, the world serpent, who will poison Thor. Hel, the half-dead goddess who rules the realm of the unheroic dead. The gods knew these children would destroy them, but they couldn't bring themselves to kill babies, even monstrous ones. Instead, they tried to contain them, which only guaranteed their eventual revenge. The breaking point comes when Loki, in a fit of jealous rage, arranges the death of Balder, the most beloved of the gods. For this, he's bound beneath the earth with poison dripping onto his face until Ragnarok. But even his punishment becomes part of the problem. His writhing in agony causes earthquakes, reminding everyone above that he's still there, still suffering, still waiting. Loki represents the chaos that exists within order, the destruction that's built into every act of creation. The gods need him, his cleverness, his solutions, his ability to cross boundaries they cannot cross, but they also hate him for forcing them to need him. He's the family member who knows all your secrets, who helped create all your problems, and who will be there at the end to watch everything fall apart. At Ragnarok, Loki will break free and lead the giants and monsters against the gods, not because he's evil, but because that's his nature, his function, his fate. The gods have always known this would happen. They bound him anyway, creating the very resentment that will fuel their destruction. Even their attempts to prevent the end contribute to causing it. Of all the Norse myths, the death of Balder is perhaps the most haunting, because it's the moment when the gods realize that their doom isn't coming from outside enemies. It's growing from within their own family, from their own choices, from their own inability to break the cycles that trap them. Balder was the golden god, the most beautiful, the most beloved, the most pure. His very presence brought light and joy. Everyone loved Balder, gods, mortals, even inanimate objects. When he began having nightmares of his own death, the gods were terrified. A world without Balder was unthinkable. So Frigg, his mother, traveled through all the 9 realms, extracting promises from everything in existence never to harm her son. Fire promised not to burn him. Iron promised not to cut him. Stones promised not to crush him. Every weapon, every disease, every danger swore an oath to leave Balder untouched. The gods, relieved, turned this protection into a game. They would throw weapons at Balder and laugh as they bounced off harmlessly. They shot arrows that turned to flowers. They hurled stones that became butterflies. Balder stood smiling in the center of their play, untouchable, invulnerable, the one thing in their world that couldn't be destroyed. But Loki, watching from the shadows, discovered the one thing Frigg had overlooked: mistletoe. So young, so harmless, so insignificant that she hadn't bothered to ask for its oath. Loki fashioned a dart from mistletoe and gave it to Höder, Balder's blind brother, guiding his hand as he threw it. The dart pierced Balder's heart. The golden god fell dead, and for the first time in the history of the world, the gods were silent. The light went out of Asgard. The light went out of everywhere. Frigg begged for someone to ride to Hel, the realm of the dead, and bargain for Balder's return. Hermod, Balder's brother, volunteered. He rode Sleipnir down the long dark road to the gates of death, through valleys of shadow and across bridges made of bone, to kneel before Hel herself. Hel, Loki's daughter, half living and half corpse, listened to his plea. She agreed to release Balder on one condition: if everything in the 9 realms would weep for him, if all of creation mourned his death, she would let him return. And so the gods sent messengers everywhere. The mountains wept. The seas wept. The trees wept. Every living thing shed tears for beautiful Balder. Every rock, every cloud, every blade of grass mourned the death of light. All except one. In a cave sat an ancient giantess who refused to weep. "Let Hel hold what she has," she said. "I never loved Balder in life. I will not weep for him in death." And because all creation had not mourned, Balder remained in the realm of the dead. The giantess was Loki in disguise. Even as he wept with the others, even as he mourned the destruction his jealousy had caused, he ensured that his victim could never return. The gods knew this. They bound him beneath the earth, but the damage was done. The golden age was over. Balder's death marks the beginning of the end. Without his light, the world grows darker, colder, more violent. The gods themselves become harsher, more desperate, more willing to break their own principles. The death of innocence doesn't just symbolize the approaching darkness, it creates it. At Ragnarok, Balder will return from the dead to rule the new world after the old one burns. But that's cold comfort for the gods who must live through the darkness his absence has created. They learned that even perfect love, even divine protection, even the unanimous blessing of all creation cannot prevent loss when fate and family conspire together. The myth teaches that light is fragile, that love makes us vulnerable, and that sometimes our very attempts to protect what we cherish become the instruments of its destruction. In the end, Balder dies not because the gods loved him too little, but because they loved him too much to let him face his fate with courage. The story of Fenrir the wolf is perhaps the darkest in all of Norse mythology, because it shows how fear and prejudice can create the very evil they're trying to prevent. Fenrir wasn't born a monster. He was made into one by gods who couldn't see past their own prophecies. Fenrir was one of Loki's children, a wolf pup brought to Asgard when he was still small enough to play with. Only Tyr, the god of war and justice, was brave enough to feed him. Every day Tyr would bring meat to the growing wolf, and Fenrir would eat from his hand like a loyal pet. But the gods knew the prophecy. At Ragnarok, Fenrir would devour Odin. They watched the wolf grow larger and stronger each day, and their fear grew with him. What had started as affection curdled into suspicion. They began to see every playful nip as potential violence, every howl as a threat. Finally, their fear overcame their hospitality. They decided Fenrir had to be bound, but they couldn't simply chain him. That would violate the laws of hospitality and their own honor. So they made it into a game, a test of strength. They brought out massive iron chains and challenged Fenrir to break free. Fenrir, still trusting, allowed himself to be bound. He flexed his muscles, and the chains shattered like cobwebs. The gods cheered and brought out heavier chains. Again, Fenrir broke free easily. The gods laughed nervously and praised his strength, but privately they were terrified. They commissioned the dwarfs to forge Gleipnir, a chain made from impossible things. The sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, the spittle of a bird. Gleipnir looked like a silk ribbon, soft and delicate, but it was stronger than any metal. The gods brought Gleipnir to Fenrir and proposed another test. But Fenrir had grown wise to their fear. He saw how they looked at him now, how they whispered when they thought he couldn't hear. He sensed the trap in their too casual invitation. "If this ribbon is as weak as it appears," Fenrir said, "then there's no glory in breaking it. If it's magical and strong, then I won't risk being bound by it. Unless," he paused, looking at each god in turn, "unless one of you places his hand in my mouth as a pledge of good faith." The gods looked at each other. No one volunteered. They all knew that if they succeeded in binding Fenrir, whoever put their hand in his mouth would lose it. Finally, Tyr stepped forward, the god who had fed Fenrir as a pup, who had shown him kindness when others showed fear, placed his right hand between the wolf's jaws. They bound Fenrir with Gleipnir, and despite his struggles, the ribbon held. Realizing he had been betrayed, Fenrir bit down. Tyr lost his hand, and with it, his role as a god of justice. How can you dispense justice when you've participated in betrayal? The gods dragged Fenrir to a remote island and bound him to a rock. They placed a sword in his mouth, its point touching his palate, so he couldn't close his jaws to speak or howl. From his constant drooling, a river formed, the river of expectation flowing toward Ragnarok. The tragedy is that Fenrir had never harmed anyone until the moment they bound him. Their fear of what he might do drove them to commit the very injustice that guaranteed he would become their enemy. By treating him as a monster, they made him into one. At Ragnarok, Fenrir will break free and devour Odin, fulfilling the prophecy that started the whole cycle. But he won't do it out of evil nature. He'll do it out of justified rage. The gods created their own destroyer through their inability to trust, to love, to hope for something better than what fate seemed to promise. The Binding of Fenrir is a story about how prejudice becomes self-fulfilling prophecy, how fear creates the very dangers it seeks to avoid. In trying to prevent their doom, the gods ensured it. They turned a potential ally into a certain enemy, and in doing so they lost not just their lives but their honor. And now we come to the end of everything. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, the death of worlds, the final battle that everyone has seen coming since the beginning of time. But Ragnarok isn't just an ending. It's a revelation of what the Norse truly believed about the nature of existence itself. The signs begin slowly. The sun and moon start moving irregularly across the sky, as if the wolves chasing them are finally catching up. Winters become longer and more brutal, with no summers between them. The Fimbul winter lasts for 3 years, and during this time, all bonds of kinship and society break down. Brothers kill brothers. Parents abandon children. Honor becomes a luxury no one can afford. Loki breaks free from his torment beneath the earth, and the earthquakes his escape causes crack the foundations of the world. Fenrir breaks the ribbon that has bound him since his youth, his jaws stretching so wide they touch heaven and earth. The world serpent thrashes in the ocean, causing tidal waves that flood the land. From the realm of the dead, Hel sends a ship made from dead men's nails, crewed by the dishonored dead. From the realm of fire comes Surtur with his flaming sword, leading demons and monsters. From every direction, the enemies of the gods converge on the final battlefield of Vigrid. The gods know they're outnumbered. They've always known. Odin leads the Einherjar, the warriors he's been collecting in Valhalla for precisely this moment. But even the bravest human heroes are no match for primal forces of chaos and destruction. This isn't a battle between good and evil. It's a battle between order and entropy always wins in the end. The fights are magnificent and terrible. Thor faces Jormungandr, the world serpent, and kills it with his hammer. But the serpent's poison kills him as he takes his 9th step away from the corpse. Odin faces Fenrir and is swallowed whole, but Vidar, his son, tears the wolf's jaws apart in revenge. Tyr, the one-handed god, faces Garm, the hound of hell, and they kill each other. Freyr, the god of fertility and kingship, faces Surtur but has no weapon. He traded away his magical sword long ago for love. Surtur cuts him down and then sets fire to the world tree itself. The flames spread across all 9 realms, consuming gods and mortals, giants and dwarfs, everything that has ever lived. Even the sun is devoured by the wolf that has chased it since the beginning of time. The stars fall from the sky, the earth sinks into the sea. Everything that was becomes nothing, and silence falls across the void where the universe used to be. But the Norse didn't end the story there. From the waters, a new earth emerges, green and fertile. The sun's daughter takes her mother's place in the sky. A few gods survive. Balder returns from the dead. Some of Odin's sons escape the flames, and they sit in the grass where Asgard used to be, playing with golden chess pieces and remembering the old world. 2 humans, Lif and Lifthrasir, hide in Yggdrasil's branches during the fire and emerge to repopulate the new earth. Life continues, but it's not the same life. The new world is innocent, unmarked by the tragedies and mistakes that doomed the old one. Ragnarok teaches that endings aren't failures. They're necessary for new beginnings. The old world had to die because it had become too burdened with guilt, fear, and old grievances. The gods had to die because they had become too trapped by their own knowledge of fate to live freely. In the Norse view, destruction isn't evil, it's transformation. The fire that burns away the old world also purifies it, making space for something better to grow. Death feeds life, endings enable beginnings, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do for something beautiful is to let it end while it still has the chance to be remembered with honor. As we drift toward the end of our journey through the Norse cosmos, it's worth reflecting on what makes these myths so haunting, so different from the stories we usually tell ourselves about gods and heroes and happy endings. The Norse didn't believe in happy endings, but they believed in something perhaps more valuable, meaningful endings. Their gods don't live forever. Their heroes don't always win. Their world doesn't continue unchanged for all eternity. Everything dies. Everything ends, everything passes away, and somehow this makes everything more precious, not less. Odin's wisdom comes not from his power, but from his acceptance of powerlessness. He knows he will die, he knows his efforts to prevent it are futile, and he continues trying anyway. There's something profoundly human about a god who struggles against fate, not because he believes he can win, but because struggling is what gives life meaning. Thor's hammer will rust. Baldur's light will fade. The world tree will fall. Even the gods themselves are temporary, and they know it. This knowledge doesn't paralyze them. It frees them to act with purpose, to love with intensity, to face each day as if it might be their last, because it very well might be. The Norse understood something we often forget, that impermanence doesn't diminish beauty, it concentrates it. A flower is lovely, partly because it will wilt. A song is sweet, partly because it will end. The gods are worthy of worship not because they're eternal, but because they face the same fundamental condition as humanity, the knowledge that all things pass away, and they face it with courage. In our modern world, we often try to build things to last forever. Permanent solutions, sustainable systems, institutions designed to endure. The Norse myths suggest a different approach. Build things to burn beautifully. Create beauty knowing it won't last. Love people knowing you'll lose them. Fight for causes knowing you might fail. The myths whisper to us across the centuries that it's not the length of life that matters, but its depth, not the permanence of achievement, but the authenticity of effort, not the avoidance of suffering, but the grace with which suffering is endured. When the gods gather in their hall, drinking mead and telling stories, they don't pretend Ragnarok isn't coming. They don't lie to themselves about their immortality. Instead, they feast with greater joy because they know the feast will end. They love with greater intensity because they know love is fragile. They create beauty because beauty is temporary, and temporary things sometimes shine with a light that nothing eternal could match. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you carry with you the wisdom of endings, the understanding that everything you love, including yourself, is precious, partly because it won't last forever. The gods of Asgard, for all their power, were just like you, mortal beings trying to create meaning in the space between birth and death, light and darkness, summer and the long winter that comes to claim us all. And in that shared mortality, there is a strange comfort. If even gods must face the dark, then your own struggles are not signs of failure, but proof that you're alive, awake, and part of the great story that includes all of us, gods and mortals alike, in its telling. The ravens fly home to roost. The wolves curl up to sleep. Even gods need rest before tomorrow's battles, and so do you. Before we drift into the deeper mysteries of sleep, let us speak of Freya, the goddess who understood that love, like fate, cannot be controlled, only experienced with all its beauty and pain. Freya was not the gentle, nurturing mother figure that later cultures would expect from their goddesses. She was something far more complex, more human in her contradictions. Freya ruled over love, fertility, beauty, and death. She rode a chariot pulled by two great cats, and when she wept, her tears turned to gold. Half of all warriors who died in battle came to her hall, Sessrumnir, while the other half went to Odin's Valhalla. She was not secondary to the male gods. She was their equal in power and dignity. But here's what makes Freya's story so compelling. She loved freely and paid the price for it. When she desired the Brisingamen, a necklace of surpassing beauty crafted by 4 dwarf brothers, she traded 4 nights of love for it. The other gods whispered and judged, but Freya felt no shame. She understood that beauty and desire were divine forces, not moral failings. The necklace became both her greatest treasure and her vulnerability. Loki, in one of his cruelest tricks, stole it while she slept and brought it to Odin, who demanded she create an eternal war between 2 kings as the price for its return. Love's treasures, the myths suggest, often become the tools by which others manipulate us. Freya's tears of gold remind us that even divine love carries grief. Every love story is also a story of loss. Every beauty fades. Every connection must eventually break. Yet she continued to love, to desire, to choose passion over safety. In a mythology obsessed with fate and ending, Freya represents the courage to feel deeply even when you know feeling leads to suffering. When the giant builder demanded her hand in marriage as payment for constructing Asgard's walls, Freya's fury shook the heavens. The gods had been willing to trade her away without her consent, treating her as property rather than a person. Her rage forced them to find another solution, reminding us that even in ancient times, some understood that love cannot be given by others. It can only be freely chosen. At Ragnarok, Freya's fate remains unwritten in the surviving sources. Perhaps she, like love itself, exists beyond endings, beyond the cycles of destruction and rebirth that claim even gods. Or perhaps she chooses to die with the world she has loved, understanding that some things are too precious to survive without the context that gives them meaning. As you rest tonight, remember Freya's wisdom, that love is worth the pain it brings, that desire is sacred even when it leads to complications, and that choosing to feel deeply in a world of impermanence is perhaps the most divine act of all. In Norse mythology, the giants, the Jotuns, are not simply monsters to be slain. They are the other half of existence itself, representing the wild, untamed forces that the gods spend their lives trying to balance. To understand the Norse cosmos, you must understand that the giants are not evil. They are necessary. The Jotuns were here first. Before Odin and his brothers killed the primordial giant Ymir and built the world from his corpse, there was only the void and the giants. The gods are in many ways the newcomers, the ones who imposed order on chaos, who built civilization in the wilderness, but they can never entirely separate themselves from the giants, because they need them. Many gods married giant women. Odin's mother was a giantess. Thor's mother was a giantess. Freya fell in love with the giant woman Gerda and traded away his magical sword for a chance to marry her, a trade that will cost him his life at Ragnarok. The boundary between god and giant is permeable, fluid, constantly crossed. The giants represent winter, while the gods represent summer. The giants represent the wild storm, while the gods represent the sheltered hearth. The giants represent the unknown, while the gods represent the familiar. Neither can exist without the other. Summer needs winter to give it meaning. Order needs chaos to define itself against. Thor spends his time killing giants, but he's not committing genocide. He's maintaining balance. When giants grow too powerful, too numerous, too bold in their encroachment on the world of gods and humans, Thor pushes them back. But he never eliminates them entirely, because to do so would destroy the very tension that keeps the world alive. Some giants are wise teachers. Mimir, whose well Odin drinks from to gain wisdom, is a giant. Vafthrudnir, who engages Odin in a contest of knowledge, is a giant whose wisdom nearly matches the All-Father's own. The giants know things the gods don't, remember things the gods have forgotten. They are the keepers of ancient knowledge, old magic, primal truths. Other giants are forces of pure destruction. The fire giant Surtur waits at the edge of Muspelheim with his flaming sword, destined to burn down the world tree at Ragnarok. Jörmungandr, the world serpent, grows larger every day, his poison growing stronger. These giants represent entropy, the natural tendency of all systems toward decay and dissolution. The relationship between gods and giants mirrors the relationship between civilization and nature, between consciousness and the unconscious, between what we know and what we fear. The gods cannot simply conquer the giants because the giants represent aspects of existence that cannot be conquered, only acknowledged, respected, and carefully balanced. At Ragnarok, the giants will finally overwhelm the gods. But this is not evil triumphing over good. It's entropy fulfilling its natural function, clearing away the old to make space for the new. The giants don't destroy out of malice. They destroy because destruction is their nature, their gift to the cosmos. In our own lives, we all have giants to face. The unknown futures that frighten us, the wild emotions we can't control, the natural processes of aging and death that we cannot stop. The Norse myths suggest that the goal is not to eliminate these giants, but to develop the strength and wisdom to live alongside them, to find the balance between order and chaos that allows both to flourish. Let us speak now of the Einherjar, the chosen slain, for their story reveals something profound about the Norse understanding of purpose, sacrifice, and what it means to find meaning in loss. These are not the glorious heroes of later medieval romance. They are men and women torn from their lives at the moment of death, conscripted into an army that fights not for victory, but for the privilege of delaying defeat. When a warrior dies in battle, the Valkyries choose which souls will go to Odin's Valhalla and which to Freya's hall. Those chosen by Odin become Einherjar, literally those who fight alone. They are brought to the great hall where they feast on mead and the meat of the boar Serimnir, who is slaughtered each day and reborn each evening to feed them again. But this is not reward. This is preparation for a war they cannot win. Every day, the Einherjar arm themselves and march out to the courtyard of Valhalla to fight each other in endless battle. They hack each other to pieces. They die screaming. They experience every agony of combat. And then, at the day's end, they are restored to wholeness. Their wounds healed, their strength renewed, ready to feast and rest until tomorrow's battle begins again. They are training for Ragnarok, the final battle where they will march out alongside the gods to face the giants and monsters. They know they will lose, they have always known they will lose, yet they fight anyway, every single day, perfecting their skills for a battle that is already lost. What drives men and women to such dedication in the face of certain defeat? The myths suggest it is not hope for victory, but something deeper. the understanding that how you face inevitable loss defines who you are. The Einherjar are not fighting to win. They are fighting to face the end with courage, skill, and honor. Think about the profound psychology here. These warriors were taken from their lives at their moment of greatest bravery, when they were willing to risk everything for something they believed in. Death did not end their service. It transformed it. They continue to serve, but now they serve a cause that demands everything and promises nothing except the chance to stand with your comrades when everything falls apart. The Einherjar represent every person who has ever continued working toward a goal they knew might be impossible. Every parent who has tried to make the world better for children who might face even greater challenges. Every activist who has fought for justice, knowing that the arc of history is long and their lifetime is short. In Valhalla, the mead never runs out, the meat is always fresh, the company is always brave. But the warriors know this comfort is temporary, earned through their willingness to face eternal struggle. They feast because they have earned the right to rest. They rest because tomorrow they must fight again. When Ragnarok comes, the Einherjar will march out for the last time. They will fight monsters and giants and primal forces of destruction. They will die, most of them, but they will die as they lived, with weapons in their hands, protecting something they love, refusing to surrender even when surrender would be easier. The myth asks us, what would you be willing to train for, even if you knew you might never see the victory? What cause would be worth a lifetime of preparation for a battle you might not survive? The Einherjar chose to spend eternity becoming the best possible versions of themselves, not for personal glory, but so they could serve something greater when the moment came. In your own life, every day you prepare for challenges you cannot predict, develop skills you may never need, build strength for battles you cannot yet imagine. The Einherjar remind us that this preparation has value in itself, that becoming worthy of great challenges is a form of victory, even if the challenges defeat us in the end. At the base of Yggdrasil, the world tree, sits the well of fate, and beside this well live the three Norns, Urdur, Verdandi, and Skuld, past, present, and future. They are perhaps the most mysterious figures in all of Norse mythology, because they represent forces that even the gods cannot control or fully understand. They are weavers of fate, but they are not cruel. They simply are, like time itself. Every day the Norns draw water from the well of fate and mix it with clay to tend the roots of Yggdrasil. This is not casual maintenance. It is the daily act of keeping existence itself alive. The world tree grows sick without their care, and if the tree dies, all 9 realms die with it. The Norns are gardeners of reality itself, but their primary work is weaving. They sit at their loom, spinning threads of fate for every being in existence. Gods, giants, humans, animals, all have threads in the Norns' weaving. Some threads are golden, some are dark, some are cut short, others stretch beyond sight. The pattern they create is vast, complex, beautiful, and absolutely incomprehensible to mortal minds. What makes the Norns fascinating is that they are not arbitrary. They don't wake up each morning and decide to ruin someone's day for fun. They work according to patterns larger than any individual desire. Urdur, the past, represents what has already been decided by previous actions. Verdandi, the present, represents what is happening now based on the momentum of the past. Skuld, the future, represents what must come based on what is and what was. Even Odin cannot change what the Norns weave. He can visit them, he can ask them questions, he can learn what his fate will be, but he cannot alter it. The most powerful being in the Norse cosmos is still subject to forces greater than himself. This is perhaps the most humble aspect of Norse mythology. Even gods are not exempt from consequence. The Norns don't speak much in the myths that survive to us. They are figures of action, not words. They weave, they tend, they maintain. When Baldur dreams of his own death, it is because the Norns have already woven that thread. When Fenrir grows larger and more dangerous each day, it is because his thread demands it. When Ragnarok approaches, it is because the pattern requires that ending. Yet there is something profoundly peaceful about the Norns. They are not struggling against fate. They are fate. They don't rage against the pattern they weave because they understand that every thread, no matter how dark, is part of a design larger and more beautiful than any individual tragedy. The well of fate reflects not just what will happen, but what must happen for the pattern to maintain its integrity. Some threads must be cut short so others can continue. Some stories must end in tragedy so others can find meaning. Some loves must be lost so others can be found. The Norns see the entire tapestry, where individual threads see only their own small section. In our modern understanding, the Norns might represent the laws of physics, the momentum of history, the consequences of collective action. They are the reminder that we live in a universe of cause and effect, where past actions constrain present choices, and present choices determine future possibilities. But the Norns also represent something hopeful, the idea that our individual threads, however small, are part of a greater weaving, that our struggles and joys and losses and triumphs all contribute to a pattern that has meaning, even if we cannot see that meaning from our limited perspective. When you feel overwhelmed by circumstances beyond your control, remember the Norns. They are not weaving to punish or reward. They are weaving to create something beautiful out of the raw material of existence. Your thread matters. Your choices shape not just your own fate, but the fates of countless others whose threads cross yours. The gods themselves find peace in this understanding. They cannot change what the Norns weave, but they can choose how to respond to it. They can face their fate with courage or cowardice, with wisdom or foolishness, with love or hatred. The outcome may be predetermined, but the meaning we create in facing it is entirely our own. The Norse cosmos is not a single world, but 9 realms connected by Yggdrasil, the world tree. Each realm represents different aspects of existence, different ways of being, different approaches to the fundamental questions of life and death. To understand the Norse mind, you must understand how they saw reality as layered, complex, interconnected. Asgard is the realm of the Aesir gods, connected to Midgard by the Rainbow Bridge Bifrost, but Asgard is not heaven in the Christian sense. It's more like a fortified city under siege, constantly threatened, constantly preparing for war. The gods live in beautiful halls, yes, but they are warriors' halls built for strategy meetings and weapon storage as much as for feasting. Midgard is the realm of humans, literally Middle Earth, positioned at the center of the cosmic tree. It is protected by a wall made from the eyelashes of the primordial giant Ymir, a reminder that even human civilization exists because of divine violence against the forces of chaos. Midgard is where the drama of existence plays out, where gods and giants interact with mortal consequences. Jotunheim is the realm of the giants, the wild places beyond human civilization. It represents everything untamed. The forest where you lose your way, the mountain where storms are born, the deep places where old powers sleep. Jotunheim is not evil, but it is dangerous in the way that nature is dangerous, indifferent to human desires, operating by laws older and more fundamental than morality. Alfheim is the realm of the light elves, beings of beauty and grace who serve the gods and help maintain the natural order. The light elves represent the benevolent aspects of nature, the sunshine that helps crops grow, the rain that fills the wells, the seasonal cycles that make agriculture possible. Vanaheim is the home of the Vanir, the older gods of fertility and prosperity who made peace with the Aesir and exchanged hostages. This represents the integration of different religious traditions, the way new beliefs must accommodate older wisdom to create a complete spiritual system. Svartalfheim is the realm of the dwarfs, the master craftsmen who forge the gods' greatest treasures. The dwarfs live underground, in the dark places where metals are born and gems grow in secret. They represent the transformation of raw materials into objects of power and beauty, the alchemy of creation itself. Muspelheim is the realm of fire, home to Surtur and his flaming sword. This is the realm of pure energy, of transformation through destruction, of the heat that both creates and consumes. At Ragnarok, Muspelheim will provide the fire that burns away the old world to make space for the new. Niflheim is the realm of ice and mist, the primordial cold from which life first emerged. It contains Hel, the realm of the dead, where those who do not die in battle go to rest. Niflheim represents the return to stillness, the peace that comes after struggle, the cold that preserves rather than destroys. Helheim, ruled by Hel herself, is not a place of punishment, but simply a place of rest for those whose stories have ended. It is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. It simply is, like death itself. What's beautiful about this cosmology is how interconnected it all is. The roots and branches of Yggdrasil touch every realm, and what happens in one affects all the others. When the gods bind Loki, Earthquakes shake Midgard. When humans wage war, the ravens report it to Odin in Asgard. When the giants stir in Jotunheim, the weather changes in every realm. The 9 realms remind us that existence is not simple or singular. We live simultaneously in multiple realities: the physical world of our bodies, the social world of our relationships, the mental world of our thoughts and dreams, the spiritual world of our deepest values. The Norse understood that to be fully human, you must acknowledge all these realms and learn to navigate between them. Each realm has its own gifts and its own dangers. The key to wisdom is knowing which realm you're operating in at any given moment and what rules apply there. Sometimes you need the warrior's courage of Asgard, sometimes the practical wisdom of Midgard, sometimes the wild creativity of Jotunheim. As you drift towards sleep, imagine yourself climbing the great world tree, visiting each realm in turn. In Asgard, you feast with the gods and learn the songs of glory. In Alfheim, you dance with beings of light and learn the rhythms of natural harmony. In Svartalfheim, you watch the dwarfs forge wonders from raw stone and metal. In each realm, you discover new aspects of your own nature, new ways of being alive in a complex and interconnected cosmos. One of the most striking aspects of Norse mythology is how often gods and mortals interact, and how those interactions reveal the limits of divine power. The Norse gods are not the distant, omnipotent deities of other traditions. They are powerful, yes, but they are also vulnerable, needy, and dependent on mortals in ways that make them profoundly relatable. Odin doesn't just observe human affairs from a distance, he actively participates in them. He wanders Midgard disguised as an old traveler, testing human hospitality and wisdom. Sometimes he helps those who show kindness to strangers. Sometimes he punishes those who violate the sacred laws of guest right, but always he is learning from mortals as much as teaching them. The story of King Gylfi illustrates this beautifully. When Gylfi travels to Asgard to question the gods about their nature and powers, they don't simply give him divine pronouncements. They engage in a contest of questions and answers, where Gylfi's human curiosity and persistence earn him genuine divine wisdom. The gods respect his intelligence enough to share their deepest secrets with him. Thor regularly visits Midgard, not just to fight giants, but to help farmers, fishermen, and ordinary people facing supernatural threats. He is the god of the common folk, the one who understands that divine power means nothing if it doesn't serve human needs. Thor's strength is meaningless unless it protects something vulnerable. But the gods also need mortals. They need human prayers and offerings, yes, but more than that, they need human stories. The gods exist only as long as people remember them, tell their tales, live by their examples. Without human consciousness to give them meaning, the gods fade into irrelevance. The relationship works both ways. Mortals can achieve godlike status through exceptional courage, wisdom, or sacrifice. The Einherjar in Valhalla are humans who have transcended their mortal limitations through heroic action. Some heroes become so legendary that they merge with divine archetypes. Sigurd the Dragon Slayer takes on aspects of Odin himself. What's fascinating is how the gods must respect human free will, even when it leads to tragedy. Odin can visit mortals and offer advice, but he cannot simply force them to make wise choices. Thor can protect villages from giants, but he cannot protect people from their own foolishness or cruelty. The gods are powerful, but they are not tyrannical. They cannot save humans from themselves. This creates a cosmos where power is always shared, always negotiated. Gods have supernatural abilities, but mortals have something gods lack: the ability to change, to grow, to surprise even themselves with acts of unexpected courage or compassion. Gods are bound by their natures. Odin must always seek wisdom, Thor must always fight giants, Loki must always push boundaries. But humans can choose to be different today than they were yesterday. The myth suggests that the relationship between divine and mortal is not hierarchical, but collaborative. Gods provide the framework of cosmic order, the natural laws, the great stories that give life meaning. Mortals provide the freedom, creativity, and unpredictability that keep those stories alive and relevant. At Ragnarok, gods and mortals will fight side by side against the forces of chaos. The final battle is not gods saving helpless humans, or humans proving they don't need gods. It's both working together, each contributing their unique strengths to face a challenge neither could meet alone. In your own life, you contain both divine and mortal aspects. You have access to powers that seem almost supernatural: consciousness, creativity, love, the ability to envision and work toward futures that don't yet exist. But you also have very human limitations: mortality, uncertainty, the tendency to make mistakes and need forgiveness. The Norse myths suggest that wisdom lies not in trying to become purely divine or accepting purely mortal status, but in learning to dance gracefully between both realms. Sometimes you must act with godlike confidence and power. Sometimes you must accept human vulnerability and ask for help. The art of living well involves knowing when each approach is appropriate. Norse mythology wasn't just a collection of stories told around fires for entertainment. It was a lived religion that infused every aspect of daily life with sacred meaning. Understanding how the Norse found the divine in the ordinary helps us appreciate why these myths have such enduring power to comfort and inspire. Every morning when the sun rose, it was not just a physical phenomenon, but a daily victory of Baldur's light over the forces of darkness. When thunder rolled across the sky, it was Thor riding his goat-drawn chariot across the heavens, his hammer striking sparks from the clouds. The changing seasons were not just weather patterns, but the ongoing struggle between order and chaos, summer and winter, life and death. Ordinary objects carried sacred significance. A sword wasn't just a weapon, but a repository of ancestral honor, sometimes given names and treated as a living thing with its own personality. A ship wasn't just transportation, but a symbol of life's journey, built with ceremonies and blessed with rituals to ensure safe passage through dangerous waters. Food was sacred because it connected humans to the gods who provided it. Every feast was an echo of the divine banquets in Valhalla and Asgard. Sharing food created bonds of kinship and obligation that extended beyond the immediate moment into the realm of the eternal. To offer hospitality to a stranger was to participate in Odin's wanderings, to risk entertaining a god unaware. Marriage ceremonies invoked Thor's blessing, with Mjolnir placed on the bride's lap to ensure fertility and protection. The hammer's power wasn't just destructive, it was also creative, capable of blessing as well as breaking. Birth rituals connected newborns to their ancestral spirits and the protective power of family gods. Even death was ritualized in ways that maintained connection between the living and the dead. Burial goods weren't just sentimental tokens, but practical supplies for the journey to the afterlife. The burning of ship burials wasn't just disposal of the dead, but a spectacular send-off that transformed grief into celebration of a life well lived. Work itself was sacred. Farmers plowing their fields were participating in the cosmic order that kept chaos at bay. Smiths forging tools and weapons were channeling the creative power of the dwarfs. Poets composing verses were wielding magic as real as any sword, shaping reality through the power of words. The Norse understood that the sacred wasn't separate from the ordinary. It was the ordinary seen with clarity and reverence. A meal shared with friends was a communion with the gods. A difficult decision was an opportunity to demonstrate the courage of the Einherjar. A moment of grief was participation in the universal sorrow that even gods must face. This integration of sacred and ordinary created a world where every action mattered, where every choice had cosmic significance, where every person was both audience and actor in the great drama of existence. You weren't just watching the stories of gods and heroes, you were living your own version of those eternal patterns. Modern life often feels disconnected from the sacred, reduced to mere productivity and consumption. But the Norse approach suggests that this disconnection is a choice, not an inevitable condition. We can choose to see our daily work as participation in maintaining cosmic order. We can treat our relationships as sacred bonds that connect us to something larger than ourselves. When you cook a meal for people you love, you are channeling Freya's gift of nurturing abundance. When you face a difficult challenge with courage, you are walking in Thor's footsteps. When you seek to understand something complex and mysterious, you are sharing Odin's quest for wisdom. When you create something beautiful from raw materials, you are working alongside the dwarfs in their mountain forges. The myths remind us that we are never just individuals struggling alone. We are part of an ongoing story that includes gods and heroes, and everyone who has ever faced the fundamental challenges of existence. Our ordinary lives are threaded through with sacred significance if we have eyes to see it. As we near the end of our journey through the Norse cosmos, it becomes clear that the most profound teaching of these ancient stories is their understanding of endings. In a world obsessed with permanent solutions and eternal growth, the Norse offer a different wisdom, the knowledge that all things end, and that this ending is not defeat, but transformation. The gods of Asgard are not eternal in the way we usually think of divinity. They age, they can be wounded, they make mistakes, and they will die. Odin trades his eye for wisdom, knowing that what he learns will not prevent his doom, but might help him face it with greater understanding. This is perhaps the deepest courage, to seek truth even when truth offers no escape from suffering. Baldur's death teaches us that even the most beloved, the most innocent, the most beautiful among us are not immune to loss. But his death also teaches us that love persists beyond ending. The universal mourning for Baldur, every living thing weeping for the lost god of light, shows that our capacity to grieve is also our capacity to love, and that both are sacred. Ragnarok itself is not simply destruction, but also renewal. The fire that burns away the old world clears space for new growth. The gods who die in the final battle make room for their children to create something different, something unburdened by the mistakes and tragedies of the past. Even universal ending contains the seeds of new beginning. This perspective transforms how we understand our own endings. Death is not failure, but completion. Aging is not defeat, but ripening. The end of relationships, careers, dreams is not meaningless loss, but the natural cycle that allows new possibilities to emerge. The Norse teach us to grieve deeply, but also to trust that endings create space for discoveries we cannot yet imagine. The wisdom of endings applies not just to ultimate mortality, but to all the small deaths we experience throughout life. The end of childhood, the end of innocence, the end of certainty. These are not tragedies to be avoided, but necessary transformations that allow us to become who we're meant to be. Odin's sacrifice on the world tree shows us that sometimes we must let go of who we are to become who we need to be. Hanging for 9 days and nights, pierced by his own spear, he dies to his old self and is reborn with new knowledge. The runes he gains are not just magical symbols, but insights that can only be earned through willingness to release everything familiar and comfortable. Thor's doomed battle with the world serpent represents the noble futility of much human endeavor. We fight battles we cannot win, protect things that will eventually be lost, create beauty that will not last forever. But the myth suggests that the meaning lies not in permanent victory, but in the courage to continue fighting, creating and loving despite impermanence. The Norns teach us that fate is not punishment, but pattern. The tragedies woven into our lives serve purposes we cannot see from our limited perspective. What feels like random suffering may be the very experiences that develop the compassion, strength, and wisdom we need to serve something larger than ourselves. Even Loki, the agent of chaos and destruction, serves a necessary function. His disruptions prevent the gods from becoming too comfortable, too rigid, too removed from the vitality that comes from facing genuine challenges. Sometimes, what we call our problems are actually the forces pushing us toward growth we would never choose, but desperately need. The Norse vision suggests that wisdom lies not in avoiding endings, but in learning to end well. How we face loss, how we handle transition, how we respond to forces beyond our control. These define our character more than our successes or achievements. The gods are remembered not for winning, but for the courage they showed while losing. In the final moments before sleep claims consciousness, the Norse myths offer one last gift, the understanding that every ending is also a beginning, that every death feeds new life, that the wheel of existence turns continuously, and we are part of something far larger than our individual stories. After Ragnarok, after the fire and flood have consumed the old world, something unprecedented happens: renewal without revenge. The gods who return from death do not seek to punish those who destroyed them. Baldur comes back from hell not bitter, but purified. The new world that rises from the sea is green and fertile, unmarked by the tragedies that defined the old one. This is perhaps the most hopeful vision in all mythology, that wisdom can be preserved without the wounds that originally taught it, that innocence can be regained without ignorance, that we can start fresh while still carrying the lessons of the past. The chess pieces the surviving gods find in the grass where Asgard once stood represent this perfectly. The game continues, but with a clean board.